Welcome to True Crime Deep Dive. I am your host, Sherry.
I'm your host, Mark.
Let's dive into it. Okay, so imagine this. You're in Louisiana, right? It's a cold September day, and everything's still and quiet at this shelter home.
Oh, wow.
And then suddenly, police officers barge in, and they arrest the 72-year-old man.
Oh, my gosh.
But he's frail, he's in a wheelchair, he's got diabetes and heart problems, like you'd expect to see him in a hospital, not in handcuffs, you know?
Right.
But as we're about to find out, this was not just any elderly man.
Wow, that's an incredible image, right? This juxtaposition of this seemingly harmless individual with this, like, powerful force of law enforcement coming in.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, what could this guy possibly have done?
And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
Okay, great.
So this man's name was Samuel Little, and he's considered by many to be the most prolific serial killer in American history.
Oh, wow.
He confessed to 93 murders.
93?
Yeah, across more than half the states in the U.S.
Goodness.
And this isn't just some kind of, like, you know, boastful claims from prison or something like that. The FBI has actually verified around 50 of these confessions, and they're still investigating more.
Wow, and that's just the ones they verified.
Exactly.
There could be even more out there.
It's a staggering number, you know, and then on top of that, he had a 100-page arrest record.
Really?
Spanning 6 decades.
6 decades, goodness.
Yeah, so you're talking about someone who was involved in criminal activity for the majority of his life?
Yeah, that's a long time. I mean, that surpasses, you know, some of the most infamous serial killers that we've ever heard of, just in terms of the sheer duration and the potential scale of the tragedy that he inflicted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it really begs the question, how could someone like this operate for so long under the radar without being caught sooner?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, right? And what makes it even more chilling is the fact that, you know, people who knew him in prison, they said he was friendly, like even paternal.
Really?
He would call women baby, he would sign letters, God bless, you know?
Huh.
But then these same people who observed him, they also talk about being deeply disturbed by the things he would just casually mention.
Right.
In conversations about his life. So it's this really strange and unsettling duality.
It's like this unbelievable mask that he was able to wear, right? This ordinary exterior concealing this truly profound darkness.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes you think about, you know, evil doesn't always present itself in a way that we might expect.
No, absolutely. It challenges our preconceived notions of what a monster looks like.
Right.
Because it highlights the fact that someone capable of immense harm can blend seamlessly into everyday life.
So let's go back to the beginning and try to understand a little bit more about where this darkness came from.
Okay.
Samuel Little was born Samuel McDowell in 1940.
Okay.
And his early life was, well, let's just say it was far from ideal.
Okay.
His mother was only 16 years old when she had him.
Wow.
She was working as a prostitute, and she abandoned him shortly after birth.
Goodness.
So he was raised by his grandmother in Ohio, but, you know, even with his grandmother, there was a lot of instability in his life.
So a real lack of that stable foundation that's so crucial for child development.
Exactly. And, you know, it's hard not to wonder how that early trauma might have shaped him.
Right. Of course, we can never excuse horrific actions based on someone's childhood. But it's important to acknowledge that early life experiences can have a profound impact on an individual's psychological developments.
Absolutely.
You know, the trauma of abandonment, the absence of stable parental figures. These are significant factors that can contribute to psychological distress, and in some cases, it can manifest in very destructive ways.
And there were signs even early on that something was amiss. I mean, he got into trouble in school. His first crime was stealing in middle school, and that landed him in reform school. But it goes even deeper than that. He would talk about these vivid fantasies he had about strangulation, and they apparently started very young, like possibly even in kindergarten.
In kindergarten?
Yeah, he claimed that he was fascinated by his teacher and how she would touch her neck.
Oh, wow. So like a very ordinary gesture.
Right, exactly. And then there was also this incident in 3rd grade with a young girl. And he claimed that this girl with her bulging green eyes somehow knew about his dark side and was taunting him.
That's a very specific and somewhat disturbing memory to hold on to from such a young age.
It is, isn't it? And you know, on top of these fantasies, he was also very drawn to true crime magazines, especially ones that depicted strangulation.
So it's like he was actively seeking out material that validated and reinforced these dark thoughts and these inclinations.
Yeah, it's really unsettling when you think about it. And then when he was 16, he committed his first serious crime, he attempted to burglarize a place in Omaha, and that led to 4 years in juvenile detention.
4 years?
Yeah, and you'd think that might have set him straight, but nope, just 3 years after getting out, he was arrested again for burglary.
Oh, wow. So this is already becoming a pattern.
It is. This time, it was for breaking into a furniture store, and he ended up serving another 3 years in prison for that.
So despite these periods of incarceration, he just kept returning to criminal activity.
Yeah, it's like nothing could break the cycle.
This really highlights the complexities of criminal justice and the challenges of rehabilitation.
Right, and to make things even stranger, during one of his prison stints, he claimed to have been a prize fighter.
A prize fighter.
Yeah, I know. It's like this bizarre detail that just adds another layer to his already complicated personality.
Well, whether or not that's true, it does suggest a certain fascination with power and dominance.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that definitely comes up again and again throughout his life.
Right.
So between 1957 and 1975, Little was arrested a staggering 26 times.
26 times.
Across 11 different states.
Wow.
And the charges ranged from fraud and shoplifting to armed robbery, breaking and entering, DUI, soliciting sex workers, aggravated assault, even attacking government officials, and sexual crimes.
Goodness, it's like a laundry list of offenses.
It is, and yet during all of that time, he was never charged with murder.
Never charged with murder despite 26 arrests.
Yeah, it's almost unbelievable when you look back on it.
It really makes you think about how the lack of communication between different law enforcement agencies in different states might have played a role in allowing him to continue for so long.
Absolutely. There were no centralized databases back then, and information sharing was limited, so he could commit crimes in one state and then move to another, and the police in the new state might have no idea about his past.
He was able to exploit those jurisdictional gaps.
Exactly, and because of that, he was able to avoid serious consequences for decades.
It's a tragic example of how systemic issues can contribute to these kinds of horrific outcomes.
So let's fast forward a little bit to 1982 in Mississippi.
Okay.
Little was actually charged with murder for the first time.
Finally.
The victim was a 22-year-old woman named Melinda Rose Lepre, and sadly, her skeletal remains were later found.
Oh my gosh.
But incredibly, the grand jury declined to indict him, and the case never even went to trial.
What? How could that be?
Well, there are reports that the authorities weren't really putting much effort into solving her murder.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is, and it suggests that maybe her case wasn't taken as seriously as it should have been.
Right, because of her social status or other factors.
Exact.
And this kind of systemic bias can have devastating consequences.
And then 2 years later, in 1984, he was on trial again, this time in Florida, for the murder of 26-year-old Patricia Ann Mount, who was last seen with him.
Okay.
There were witnesses who placed them together, but they were deemed not credible, and Little was acquitted.
Again.
I know, it's incredibly frustrating, isn't it?
It's like the justice system keeps failing to hold him accountable.
And if he had been convicted for either of these murders,
Right.
It's possible that so many other lives could have been saved.
It's a chilling thought.
It really is. And also, thinking about these early cases, it makes you wonder what factors might have swayed the juries back then.
Well, it's tough to say for sure without all the details, but often in cases where there isn't strong forensic evidence like DNA, the credibility of witnesses becomes crucial. So if the witnesses had prior criminal records, or if they were seen as unreliable, for whatever reason, that could have definitely influenced the jury's decision, even if their testimony was truthful.
That makes sense.
Sadly, sometimes justice hinges on perceptions rather than facts.
So that same year, 1984, Little was arrested in California for assault, kidnapping, and attempted murder of a 22-year-old woman named Lori Barros.
Okay.
And this case is truly remarkable because Lori survived.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she bravely came forward and described this horrific attack in detail.
Oh, my.
She was dragged into Little's car, driven to an abandoned lot, tied up, and choked to the point of unconsciousness.
Goodness.
And she was absolutely convinced that he was going to kill her.
Wow, Lori's story is just chilling, and it provides such a clear picture of Little's methods. The strangulation, the isolated locations.
Yeah, and the fact that she survived is so important because it gives us this firsthand account of what he was capable of.
Right. Even though the legal consequences for him weren't as severe as they should have been,
Yeah.
her testimony is invaluable.
And here's the really disturbing part. Just 30 days later, Little was caught in the act again.
Oh, no.
In the same location, attacking another woman named Tanya Jackson.
You're kidding.
Nope. Same MO, strangulation, assault in an abandoned parking lot.
It's like he didn't even try to change his tactics.
I know, right? It's almost like he felt invincible. And to make matters worse, Tanya also survived and testified against him, but despite being caught red-handed, Little only pleaded guilty to assault.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and get this. He even asked the officer if the bitch made it.
Oh, that's just cold-blooded.
I know, it's chilling, and it really shows how little remorse he had.
This really highlights how marginalized communities can be treated unfairly by the justice system.
Absolutely. For Little to reoffend in the same way so soon after Lori's attack,
Right.
it suggests that he didn't fear any real consequences for his actions.
And unfortunately, his past experience has probably reinforced that belief.
Sadly, yeah. And this pattern of violence and minimal consequences goes even further. Back in 1975, there was another incident where a 22-year-old woman was attacked in broad daylight.
Oh my gosh.
She was strangled with a cord, sexually assaulted, but she managed to escape.
Oh my goodness.
The police found Little dozing in his car at the scene, but he denied the sexual assault and claimed that the woman was a sex worker who had cheated him.
So he's blaming the victim.
Exactly. And despite the physical evidence the court had closed, the charges were reduced to assault, and he only served 3 months in jail.
3 months for strangling and sexually assaulting someone.
I know, it's just mind-boggling, isn't it?
This case is a tragic example of how societal biases can really affect the outcome of justice.
Yeah, the fact that the victim was perceived as less credible because of her background likely played a role in the reduced charges.
And that's a deeply disturbing thought.
It is, and it speaks to larger issues of inequality within the justice system.
Absolutely.
So for decades, Little was able to evade serious consequences for his actions.
It's almost as if he was operating with impunity.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating to think about all the red flags and missed opportunities.
Right, and all the potential lives that could have been saved if he had been stopped sooner.
But finally, in 2012, his past caught up with him.
What happened?
He was arrested in Kentucky on drug charges.
Card charges.
Yeah, and while he was in custody, they took his DNA and ran it through the system,
Done.
and that's when everything changed.
What did they find?
His DNA matched evidence from 3 unsolved murders in Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
The murders had taken place between 1987 and 1989,
Okay.
and the victims were Carol Eileen Alford Guadalupe Duarte Apodaca and Audrey Nelson Everett.
So finally there was concrete evidence linking him to these murders.
Exactly, and the details of these murders are just horrifying. All 3 women were strangled and their bodies were dumped on the streets.
Oh my gosh.
In Audrey Nelson's case, she had also suffered a broken spine from blunt force trauma.
That's brutal.
It is, and the DNA evidence was overwhelming. There was semen on the clothing of 2 victims and fingerprints on the 3rd.
So there was no denying his involvement.
No, and it's worth noting that Audrey Nelson actually fought back during the attack.
Really?
Yeah, they found Little's DNA under her fingernails.
Wow, that's incredible. She fought for her life.
She did, and it's a testament to her strength and courage.
Absolutely.
So in 2014, Little was finally convicted of these 3 murders.
After all these years.
Yeah, he was sentenced to 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole.
Wow. So justice was finally served.
Well, at least for those 3 victims.
Right.
But even after being convicted, Little continued to deny his guilt.
Really? Even with the DNA evidence?
Yeah, it's like he was incapable of taking responsibility for his actions.
That's a disturbing thought.
It is, and it shows just how deep his denial and lack of remorse ran.
So did he ever admit to any of the other murders?
He did, and that's where the story takes another incredible turn.
Oh.
In 2018, a Texas Ranger named James Holland started visiting Little in prison. Okay.
Now, Ranger Holland is known as the serial killer whisperer.
The serial killer whisperer.
Yeah, he has this amazing ability to gain the trust of even the most hardened criminals.
Wow, so what was his approach with Little?
Well, he was very patient and non-confrontational. He didn't push Little to confess, he just listened and built rapport.
So he created a space where Little felt comfortable enough to talk.
Exactly, and it worked.
Oh, wow.
Little started confessing to dozens more murders.
Dozens?
Yeah, he ended up confessing to a total of around 93 murders across 19 states.
93?
Yeah, spanning from 1970 to 2005.
That's a huge number of victims over a very long period of time.
It is, and what's even more chilling is that he could recall these murders in great detail.
Really?
Yeah, even though he was elderly and his health was failing, he could remember what his victims looked like, what they were wearing, even some of their last words.
That's both fascinating and disturbing.
It is, isn't it? And he could even draw their faces.
Draw their faces?
Yeah, which has actually helped investigators connect his confessions to unsolved cases. So his detailed memory is actually helping to solve cold cases.
Exactly. It's both horrifying and helpful at the same time.
It's a strange paradox.
It really is, but perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this whole case is Little's complete lack of remorse.
Right.
And his deeply troubling motivations. He deliberately targeted vulnerable women, sex workers, drug addicts, women of color.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, he believed that these women wouldn't be missed or that their stories wouldn't be taken seriously.
So he preyed on the most vulnerable members of society.
Exactly. And for him, it was all about power and control. He enjoyed strangling his victims and prolonging their suffering.
Oh my gosh.
It's truly horrifying, and he would even refer to his victims as babies that he loved.
That's twisted.
It's a complete dehumanization of these women, and it shows just how warped his thinking was.
It's clear that he lacked any empathy or compassion for his victims.
None whatsoever, and even more disturbingly, he sometimes described himself as an angel of mercy.
An angel of mercy, that's just delusional.
It's like he was trying to justify his actions in some sick way.
His justifications are just further proof of his deeply disturbed psyche.
Absolutely. And sadly, even though Little died in prison in 2020,
Okay.
the work to identify all of his victims continues.
Oh, wow.
Many of them remain unidentified in their faces, only known through Little's drawings.
So even in death, his crimes continue to haunt us.
They do, and the FBI is still diligently working to connect his confessions to unsolved cases.
It's an important reminder that even though he's gone, the pursuit of justice for his victims must continue.
Absolutely, and it's also a sobering reminder of the vulnerabilities that exist within our society and our justice system.
Right, we need to be constantly vigilant and strive to create a world where these kinds of horrors are less likely to occur.
That's a great point, and thinking about Samuel Little and the sheer scale of his crimes,
Right.
it really raises a lot of questions about how we can prevent something like this from happening again.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think it underscores the importance of addressing systemic issues that allow predators to operate undetected for so long.
Absolutely. And it also makes you wonder about the lasting impact of these crimes on the families of the victims.
Right. The families who may never have known what happened to their loved ones or who had to live with the pain of not knowing for years.
Exactly. And the fact that many of Little's victims were marginalized individuals makes it even more important that their stories are told and that they're remembered.
Yes, their lives mattered and their stories deserve to be heard.
Well said. I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
Yeah, it's been a heavy but important conversation.
It has. And, as we've delved into this dark chapter of American history,
Right.
I think it's crucial for all of us to reflect on the lessons we can learn and to continue to work towards a more just and compassionate world.
Absolutely. A world where all lives are valued and protected.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the chilling case of Samuel Little.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.
New episodes are going to be released every Tuesday and Friday.
Simple but essential.
Simple but essential information for staying up to date.
Foundational piece of knowledge.
You got it. And with that knowledge, you can engage with our content on your own terms, on your own schedule.
That's the beauty of it.
That's right.
Hmm.
So with that in mind, think about this now that you know exactly when to tune in.
Think about the future.
What burning questions do you have out there?
Yeah, what topics are you hoping we'll explore in future deep dives?
What sources are just sitting in your archives, just waiting to be unpacked?
We're ready.
Waiting to have their secrets revealed.
Send them our way.
Send them our way. We're always ready for our next dive.
Always.
Guided by your curiosity.
Yeah.
So until then, keep diving,
Happy listening.
and we'll see you soon.
See you next time.
Take care.
Bye.